So we were talking about the best case, and we were talking about the worst case too. And for the worst case, we said that worst case would be a scenario, an example, an instance where the computer has to run the possible maximum possible number of statements. Okay, so you have to really understand the maximum possibility there, because there may be a case which will let the program to run all of these statements, or just the maximum possible number of these statements. Similarly, on the opposite side, we have the best case, where the computer has to run the least or the minimum number of statements. And we did discuss our problem, but in this video I'm gonna give you a new program. And for that program, what we're gonna try to do is that we're gonna try to find the best case, and we're gonna try to find the worst case. So I'm gonna write a program over here. So it says program, and in this program, again, we're going to take an input from the user, take input, and store it in variable a. Okay, and then there are going to be a couple of if statements, like if a is exactly equal to 0, then in this if block, we need to print 0. Okay, and let's just close this if block. And there is an other if statement which says else if a is exactly equal to 1, we have another if block over here for this if else if statement, which is going to say print 1. And let me scroll it down. There is another if statement. Which I'm gonna write in orange, which says else if a is exactly equal to 2. So what I need you to do is print 2. Okay, and I am given the data over here that if takes 1 unit of time, and print also takes 1 unit of time. Okay, and there are these statement over here. So I'm ignoring this statement for now. Okay, I have ignored this statement. So we're going to be focusing on if and the prints. Okay, so let me clear some stuff. That's our first statement, that's second, that's third, that's fourth, that's fifth, that's sixth, and that's seventh. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna ask you what would be the best case for this program. What kind of scenario can you come up with that's gonna help this program to run the least number of statements? And also, what kind of scenario can you come up with that's gonna help, or that's gonna make this program to run the maximum possible number of statements? Again, it is not mandatory that the program runs all of these statements. You just have to find a way which makes the program to run the maximum possible number of statements. Okay, so let's just solve this together. So I am looking at these if conditions over here, and let's just talk about the best case over here. I know by looking at the program, I'm sitting down and I'm observing, I am thinking, analyzing, and I came to know that no matter what, I have to run this statement. I cannot skip this statement. Whether it would be the best case or whether it is the worst case, this statement over here, I have to run it anyways. Okay, so how about this if condition over here? What do you think about this if condition over here? Yeah, so I can say I cannot skip the first statement. How about if I come up with some scenario that's gonna help the program to just run the first if that is written in blue? Okay, so is there a scenario, is there some way that is gonna help this program to just run the first if block and the rest of the if blocks are skipped? Is there an can you come up with some scenario that's gonna run just these statements and is gonna skip these statements? So I did analyze and I did sit down and I analyzed and I thought about it, and there is a scenario. So what if again the user is in front of the computer and the computer is running this program over here? So this program is installed in this computer. Okay, so you cannot tell the user to I mean, you cannot force the user to give specific inputs, right? The user will give any input as or whatever he thinks that, okay, I'm gonna type this or that. So you cannot force the input. You just had this computer and you have installed your program in this computer over here. Okay, so the user is in front of the computer is running this program, and the user types in, let's say, 0. The user types in 0. So we are now at this statement over here. So we have executed this statement and the user gave us the value of a is equal to 0. What's going to happen now? Let me clear some of the stuff. What's going to happen now? The program is going to move to the next statement over here. Okay, so it's going to run the first if condition. What's going to happen? So the first if says if a is exactly equal to 0, then print let me clear. If a is exactly equal to 0, now you have to put in the value which is 0 is exactly equal to 0, which is indeed true. Now because the if has returned true, due to this we will be able to run print statement. Okay, just because again the if condition is giving us the true as a result, we now can run the print statement. So we were able to run this statement, and due to the result which came out to be true, we will run this statement which says print 0. So the total of 3 statements were executed till now. How about the rest of the statements? Will the program run the green else if or the orange else if? So for those who don't know, about the execution way of the if else if. For those guys, I'm gonna give a side tutorial. Keep in mind that whenever we're gonna see these kind of syntax, if else if, and there is like condition and more block, and then else if, and there is condition and block. So if this if over here runs and it returns true, whatever this if says is gonna run, and the control or the computer will skip the rest of the statements. Okay, the rest of the which statements? Else if. So that's a main point over here. So since we managed to run the first if, which returned us true, so we will only run the corresponding if block, and we will skip all of these else if. Okay, so that's it. What if this if over here returned us false? In that case, this block over here would be skipped, and the control or the computer would move to this else if statement. And let's just hypothetically say it did return true. It returned us true. So what's going to happen now? Since this else if returned us true, so therefore the corresponding if block would have run, and the rest of the else if, only the rest of the else if would be skipped. Okay, and what if this if had returned us false too? Then this would have been skipped, and the computer would have moved to this else if. Okay, then the computer would have moved to this else if, and let's just say it returned us true. Then this block would have been run, and that's it. So keep in mind that if the when you see if with else if, then if the first if returns us true, then the corresponding if statements or the if block would run, and the rest of the else if we will skip. Okay, but if this has returned us false and if this has returned us true, then the next else if would have been skipped. Okay, and similarly, if this has returned us false too, then we would be running this else if over here. So that's an important point. Okay, so now that you know how the if statements run with else if, what do you think about this? So we have taken the value from the user and it is 0, and we have moved to this blue if statement over here, and since a has 0 and 0 is exactly equal to 0, which is indeed true, we're gonna be running the corresponding if block. This if block contains print statement which says 0, so on the computer screen it would say true. Okay, and the rest of the if blocks, they will be skipped. Okay, since we now managed to run the least number of statements, we would say that is the best case. The best case is the one when the user passes in 0 for a. Okay, so I'm gonna clear some of the stuff over here. Okay, there you go. There you go. So that was our best case. How about the worst case now? So the worst case would be the one where the program is made to run the maximum possible number of statements. So the maximum possible number of statements would say like all of these or the possibility of some of these. Okay, so let us see. I want to at least run all of these statements. So this means I want to make my computer go all of the way down. Okay, all of the way down. I'm gonna push my computer to all the way down, and I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna think about how will I do that. What kind of scenario can I come up with that's gonna push the computer all the way down to run all of these statements? Okay, so let us think about together. What if the user sits down and is running this program over here and passes in the value of 1. Okay, the user has given the value 1 and the 1 is stored in the value a. So with this value we're gonna again run our computer. So we were managed to run this statement. Okay, let's talk about this if over here. So I'm gonna select the blue color over here and I'm gonna check what's gonna happen with the first if a is exactly equal to 0. Let's just substitute the value for a, which is 1 is exactly equal to 0, which is false. So we did run this statement, we did run the statement 2, but since it returned us false, we're gonna skip this statement over here. Okay, we're gonna be skipping this statement. We're gonna be skipping the statement inside the if block. So the print 0 is not gonna execute. What's gonna happen is that, like I told you, it's gonna move to the fourth statement. So it has skipped this one, and now we are trying to evaluate else if a is exactly equal to 1. So let's just substitute the value for a and let's see what's going to happen. So if else if 1 is exactly equal to 1. Okay, cool. So that turns out to be true. So now what's going to happen? Like I told you, if the if returns true, then the corresponding if block runs. Okay, so now the computer will move inside the print statement. The computer will move inside the print statement and it's gonna show us 1. That's it. When this happens, the control doesn't move down now. Okay, the control will not move down. It's gonna skip these statements. Okay, there was a scenario when I said now there are two scenarios. You have to keep that in keep those scenarios in mind. If here you could find true, then you would have skipped all of these. Okay, if here you would have find true, you have skipped the rest of these. Okay, so that's it. But can we do any better than that? Can we still push our computer to just run the maximum possible number of statements? Can we do that? Can we come up with some scenario? Can we come up with some scenario where we could manage to push the computer all the way down to run maximum possible number of statements? Okay, let's see. What if the user, let's say, let me clear some of the stuff. So we are running this program and the user is in front of the program. The user pass is in front of the program. There you go. And the user passes in the value. The user passes in the value 2. The value 2 goes in, and let's say what's going to happen. So we were, as you can see, we just cannot skip this statement. As soon as our computer enters this program, we will be running this statement and we're going to ask the user to give us some value to move on. Okay, to run next of this statement. Okay, so we were managed to run this statement for sure. Whether it's the best case or the worst case, we cannot skip this statement. And we got the value 2. Okay, now we have value 2 and now we are at statement 2. Let's check what's going to happen. If 2 is exactly, so I'm directly substituting a value for a. So if 2 is exactly equal to 0, which is indeed false, so we will be skipping this statement, and like I told you, we will just jump to this part over here, the else if, and we will run this one. Okay, so else if 2 is exactly equal to 1, again that's false, so we will be skipping this one and we will be moving on to the last else if. So we managed somehow to skip, so we managed somehow to push the computer far down than we did before. Okay, so else if, now else if 2 is exactly equal to 2. Okay, so that is indeed true. So what's going to happen is that we're going to be printing 2. So the computer screen is going to show you 2. Okay, cool. So we managed to push the computer to run maximum possible number of statements. So the worst case is when the user passes in 2. When the user passes in 2. When we gave the value of 0, we managed to just found the best case. Okay, and the computer the maximum the computer would go is this one, which is the least number of statements. When we gave the value of 1, how many statements did we run at that time? When we gave the value of 1, so we ran this one, we ran this one, we skipped this one, we ran this one, we ran this one. Okay, so the total number of statements were 1 2 1 2 3 4. When a is equal to 1, statements we ran were 4. How about when we gave the value of 2, how many statements did we run at that time? Okay, so we did run this one, we did run this one, we skipped this one, and we did run this one, and we skipped this one, and we ran this one, and we ran this one. Okay, so that's 1, so that's 1, that's 2, that's 3, that's 4, and that's 5. So when the value of a was 2, we pushed the computer to run 5 statements. That's the maximum possible number of statements the computer can run in the worst case, and the worst case is when the user passes in the value of 2. So I hope now you do understand what do we do when we have to find the best case, or when we have to find the worst case, and how the program execution runs for the best case. What do you have to think about when you want to find the best case? You just have to find a scenario, an example where the where you help the program to run the least number of statements, and in the worst case you have to come up with some example. You have to be creative, and you have to look for the scenario where you will push the computer to run the maximum number of statements.